Millionaire is fired for granting his sick maid a day off until her 7-year-old daughter exposes a 921 meters fraud in court, leaving everyone stunned. Before we unfold this sorrowful story of isolation and grief, comment your location and subscribe for more emotional journeys. The mahogany conference table shook as Michael Harrison's fist crashed down, his face flushed with disbelief. "You're firing me from my own company." Board member Patricia Wells avoided his piercing blue eyes, her voice barely above a whisper. "The shareholders voted, Michael, effective immediately." "For what? Giving Maria a day off when her daughter was in the hospital?" Michael's voice cracked with emotion. At 32, he'd built Harrison Tech Solutions from nothing, turning a garage startup into a $50 million empire. Now, 5 men in expensive suits sat across from him like vultures circling roadkill. "It's about fiscal responsibility," said Robert Chen, the lead investor. "Your emotional decision-making has cost us clients." Michael laughed bitterly. "Maria's been cleaning these offices for 3 years without a single sick day. Her 8-year-old daughter needed surgery, and I gave her 1 day off with pay. That's your definition of fiscal irresponsibility?" The room fell silent, except for the steady tick of the antique clock his grandfather had given him. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Seattle's skyline stretched endlessly, a testament to dreams built and destroyed. "The decision is final," Wells said, sliding a thick envelope across the table. "Security will escort you out." Michael stared at the severance papers, his hands trembling with rage. This wasn't just about Maria. Something deeper was happening here. The vote had been too swift, too coordinated. These people had been planning this. "You'll regret this," he whispered, grabbing his leather briefcase. "When you realize what you've done, it'll be too late." As security flanked him through the lobby he'd designed himself, past the motivational quotes he'd personally chosen, Michael's mind raced. His phone buzzed, a text from his ex-wife, Sarah. "Emma's asking when you're picking her up. She made you a drawing." His 7-year-old daughter, the only pure thing left in his rapidly crumbling world. How would he explain that Daddy's big company didn't want him anymore? Outside in the drizzling rain, Michael looked back at the gleaming Harrison Tech building. Something wasn't right about today. The timing, the coordination, the almost rehearsed responses from the board. Someone had orchestrated this carefully, but who and why? His phone rang, an unknown number. "Mr. Harrison? This is Judge William Crawford's office. You're required to appear in court Monday morning at 9 a.m. sharp. Failure to appear will result in a warrant for your arrest." The line went dead before Michael could ask why. Standing in the rain, briefcase in hand, Michael Harrison realized his nightmare was just beginning. Emma Harrison pressed her small nose against the cold kitchen window, watching for her father's silver BMW. At 7 years old, she understood more than adults gave her credit for, especially when it came to reading people's faces and voices. "Daddy sounds sad," she told her stuffed elephant, Mr. Peanuts, adjusting his tiny red bow tie. "But he's trying to hide it." The front door opened with its familiar creak, and Emma rushed into her father's arms. Michael lifted her high, spinning once before setting her down, but she noticed his smile didn't reach his eyes like usual. "Hey, sunshine, how was school today? Mrs. Peterson taught us about being detectives." Emma bounced excitedly. "She said good detectives notice everything and ask lots of questions. Look what I made you." She handed him a crayon drawing, a stick figure in a suit standing next to a little girl with pigtails, both smiling under a rainbow. At the bottom, in her careful 7-year-old handwriting, "My daddy is the best boss ever." Michael's throat tightened. He knelt down to Emma's level, studying her serious brown eyes, so much like his own. "Emma, Daddy needs to tell you something important. I'm not going to be the boss anymore." Her face scrunched in confusion. "Did you get in trouble?" "Something like that, sweetheart. But everything's going to be okay." Emma tilted her head, processing this information with the intensity she applied to everything. "The mean people at work don't deserve you anyway, Daddy. You're too good for them." Later that evening, While Emma played in her room, Michael sat at his home office desk, staring at the court summons. Judge William Crawford. He'd never heard the name before. The citation mentioned corporate malfeasance and fiduciary violations, legal jargon that made no sense given the circumstances. "Daddy?" Emma appeared in the doorway, clutching Mr. Peanuts. "Why do you look worried?" "Just some grown-up stuff, Sunshine. Nothing for you to worry about." But Emma was already studying the papers on his desk with her characteristic intensity. "What's malfeasance mean?" "It means doing something wrong on purpose." "But you never do anything wrong on purpose." Emma's voice rose with indignation. "You helped Mrs. Martinez when she couldn't afford her medicine, and you let everyone leave early when it snowed, and you always share your lunch with Tommy from security." Michael pulled his daughter onto his lap, amazed as always by her fierce loyalty and sharp memory. "Sometimes good people get accused of bad things, Emma. That's why we have judges and courts, to figure out the truth." Emma nodded solemnly, then whispered, "Daddy, what if the judge is wrong? What if he doesn't believe you're good?" The question hit Michael like a physical blow. What if, indeed, he'd built his entire life on the principle that hard work and integrity would prevail? But today had shaken that foundation. "Then we'll prove I'm telling the truth," he said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. Emma studied his face with those wise brown eyes. "I'll help you prove it, Daddy. Detective Emma is on the case." Despite everything, Michael smiled. His daughter's unwavering faith gave him strength he didn't know he still possessed. Judge William Crawford adjusted his black robes and stared at his reflection in the courthouse bathroom mirror. At 58, his silver hair and weathered face commanded respect, but his pale blue eyes held secrets that could destroy everything he'd built. 23 years on the bench, he whispered to himself. "Not now, not when I'm so close." The Harrison case was supposed to be simple, a routine corporate dispute that would end with the young entrepreneur bankrupted and disgraced. But Crawford's phone had been buzzing all morning, with increasingly urgent messages from his anonymous benefactor. "The girl is a problem," the latest text read. "She asks too many questions. Handle it." Crawford's hands shook as he deleted the message. He'd never intended for children to get involved, but Harrison's 7-year-old daughter had been present during several key conversations. Children notice things, remembered details that adults dismissed. A knock on the bathroom door interrupted his thoughts. "Your Honor, the Harrison case is scheduled to begin in 10 minutes. "I'll be right there," Crawford called, splashing cold water on his face. Meanwhile, in the courthouse lobby, Michael Harrison straightened his navy blue tie and tried to project confidence he didn't feel. His lawyer, David Murphy, a public defender who looked barely old enough to graduate law school, shuffled through a stack of hastily assembled paperwork. "I'll be honest with you, Mr. Harrison," Murphy said quietly. "This case doesn't make sense. The charges are vague, the evidence is circumstantial, and the timing is suspicious. But Judge Crawford has a reputation for being unforgiving." Michael watched families and lawyers move through the marble hallway, everyone focused on their own dramas and crises. "What do you know about Crawford?" 23 years on the bench, excellent reputation, never been overturned on appeal. But Murphy hesitated. "But what?" "There are rumors, nothing concrete, but some attorneys whisper about cases where his rulings seemed predetermined, like he'd already made up his mind before hearing the evidence." A chill ran down Michael's spine. "And today you're facing a judge who's already decided you're guilty." As they entered the courtroom, Michael's phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Emma insists on coming to court tomorrow, says she wants to see justice happen. I couldn't talk her out of it." Michael stared at the message, torn between pride in his daughter's courage and terror at the thought of her witnessing his potential destruction. Judge Crawford took the bench, his imposing presence filling the room. When his eyes met Michael's, there was something there, not just professional distance, but personal hatred, raw, burning animosity that seemed completely disproportionate to a corporate dispute. "Mr. Harrison," Crawford's voice boomed through the courtroom, You stand accused of corporate malfeasance, breach of fiduciary duty, and fraud totaling $921 million. The number hit Michael like a sledgehammer. 921 million. His entire company wasn't worth half that amount. This wasn't just a mistake, this was deliberate destruction. How do you plead? Michael stood on unsteady legs, his world tilting off its axis. Not guilty, Your Honor. Completely, absolutely not guilty. Crawford's thin smile held no warmth. We'll see about that, Mr. Harrison. We'll see about that. As the judge outlined the trial schedule, Michael realized he was trapped in something far more sinister than a simple, wrongful termination. Someone wanted him destroyed completely, and Judge William Crawford was their weapon of choice. Emma Harrison sat in the hard wooden pew of the courthouse, her legs swinging freely as she observed everything with the sharp eyes of a born detective. She'd convinced her mother to let her attend by promising to stay quiet and behave, but staying quiet didn't mean she wasn't learning. The judge doesn't like Daddy, she whispered to Mr. Peanuts, who was hidden in her small backpack. His face gets angry when he looks at him. Sarah Harrison squeezed her daughter's hand. Sometimes adults have to make difficult decisions, sweetheart. That doesn't mean they don't like someone. But Emma wasn't convinced. She'd spent years watching people's faces, learning to read the subtle signs that adults thought children couldn't understand. Judge Crawford's expression when he looked at her father wasn't just professional sternness. It was personal dislike, maybe even hatred. During the lunch recess, Emma overheard two lawyers talking in the hallway. Crawford's being unusually harsh, one said, even for him. 900 million in damages. The kid's company isn't worth a tenth of that. Someone wants Harrison destroyed, and Crawford's the executioner. Emma didn't understand all the words, but she understood the meaning. Someone was trying to hurt her daddy on purpose, and the judge was helping them do it. That evening, while Michael worked late in his study reviewing legal documents, Emma crept downstairs with her tablet. She'd learned to use the internet for school projects, but tonight she had a different kind of research in mind. Detective Emma's first rule, she whispered to herself, remembering Mrs. Peterson's lesson. Find out everything about the people involved. She typed carefully, Judge William Crawford, Seattle. And the search results showed official courthouse photos, news articles about various cases, and a brief biography. Born in Portland, graduated from University of Washington Law School, appointed to the bench 23 years ago. Married to Helen Crawford, no children. Emma frowned. Why would someone with no children understand what it felt like to have a daddy in trouble? She clicked on the news articles, sounding out difficult words slowly. Most were boring legal stuff, but one headline caught her attention. Judge Crawford's controversial ruling in Riverside development case saves local park. The article was 3 years old and mentioned that Crawford had ruled against a major development company, preventing them from building condominiums on land that became a children's park instead. The company's owner was quoted as being devastated by the judge's obvious bias and personal vendetta. Emma's heart started beating faster. The company owner's name was Harrison, not her daddy, but someone with the same last name. She scrolled down to find more details. Richard Harrison, chairman of Harrison Development Group, expressed outrage at what he called a predetermined ruling that ignored legal precedent and sound business practices. The Harrison claimed Judge Crawford had a personal grudge against his family name. Emma stared at the screen, her 7-year-old mind processing this information. Richard Harrison. Could he be related to her daddy? And if Judge Crawford hated someone named Harrison before, maybe that's why he hated her daddy now. She quickly typed Michael Harrison, Richard Harrison family, but found nothing connecting them. Still, the coincidence seemed too big to ignore. Emma, what are you doing up so late? Her father's voice startled her. Daddy, I was researching. Emma closed the tablet quickly, but not before Michael caught a glimpse of Judge Crawford's photo on the screen. Researching what? Sunshine? Michael sat beside her on the couch, concern evident in his voice. The judge. I think he doesn't like people named Harrison. Emma's words tumbled out in a rush. There was another Harrison man 3 years ago, and the judge made a mean ruling against him, and now he's being mean to you too." Michael stared at his daughter, amazed by her deductive reasoning. "Emma, that's actually very interesting detective work. But correlation doesn't always mean causation." "What's that mean?" "It means just because two things happen together doesn't mean one caused the other." But even as he said it, Michael wondered if his 7-year-old daughter had stumbled onto something significant. Emma yawned, her excitement giving way to tiredness. "Daddy, tomorrow I want to watch the judge's face real carefully. Detective Emma thinks he's hiding something." As Michael tucked his daughter into bed, her innocent words echoed in his mind. Children saw things adults missed, noticed patterns that escaped trained observers. Maybe Emma was onto something after all. The courthouse felt different on the second day of trial. Emma sat in the gallery with her mother, but this time she came prepared. Hidden in her school backpack, alongside Mr. Peanuts, was a small notebook and her favorite purple pen. She'd told her mother it was for drawing, but Detective Emma had a different purpose in mind. Judge Crawford entered the courtroom with his usual commanding presence, but Emma was watching everything now. His facial expressions, his body language, even where his eyes went when he thought no one was looking. "Page 1, she wrote carefully in her notebook. "Judge looks at Daddy with mean eyes, looks at prosecutor with happy eyes, looks at ceiling when Daddy's lawyer talks." The morning proceeded with testimony from Harrison Tech's former employees. One by one, they painted a picture of Michael as a caring but sometimes impulsive boss who made decisions based on emotion rather than pure business logic. "He gave me a raise when my wife had cancer," testified James Martinez, the security guard. "Said it was a performance bonus, but I knew it was because he heard about our medical bills." Emma watched Judge Crawford's face tighten with each positive testimony. She wrote, "Judge gets angrier when people say nice things about Daddy." During cross-examination, the prosecutor, a sharp-faced woman named Ms. Kelly, twisted each act of kindness into evidence of financial irresponsibility. So Mr. Harrison regularly gave unauthorized bonuses and raises based on personal circumstances rather than company policy. Well, yes, but... And these decisions were made without board approval. He was the CEO. "Thank you. No further questions." Emma's pen moved quickly. "Mean lady lawyer cuts people off when they try to say good things." But it was during the afternoon session that Emma made her most important observation. The prosecutor had called a surprise witness, Robert Chen, the board member who'd led the vote to fire Michael. As Chen took the stand, Emma noticed something strange. Just before he began testifying, Judge Crawford reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. He glanced at it quickly, then looked directly at Chen and gave an almost imperceptible nod. Emma's eyes widened. She'd seen her mum do the same thing when coordinating with her friends, a quick check of messages followed by a subtle signal. But judges weren't supposed to talk to witnesses, were they? "Page 3, she wrote. Judge checked phone, then nodded at boardman. They know each other. Chen's testimony was devastating. He described Michael as reckless, emotional, and financially irresponsible. He presented documents showing questionable expenditures and unauthorized payments to employees. "This pattern of behavior," Chen said, looking directly at Judge Crawford, "culminated in the alleged embezzlement of $921 million from offshore investment accounts." Michael's lawyer jumped up. "Objection, Your Honor. There's no evidence of embezzlement, and those offshore accounts were legitimate business investments." Crawford's response was swift and harsh. "Overruled. The witness may continue." Emma watched the exchange with growing certainty. Something was very wrong here. She'd seen enough playground conspiracies to recognize the signs. People working together against someone else, secret signals, coordinated attacks. During the next recess, Emma tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, I need to tell Daddy something important." "Sweetheart, Daddy's talking with his lawyer right now. It's about the judge." Emma's voice was urgent. "He's cheating." Sarah looked alarmed. "Emma, you can't say things like that. Judges don't cheat." But Emma was already pulling away, determined to reach her father. She dodged between adults in the crowded hallway until she found Michael huddled with David Murphy near a window. "Daddy! The judge has a phone and he talks to the board man." Michael knelt down to Emma's level. "What do you mean, sunshine?" Emma opened her notebook, showing him her careful observations. Before the mean board man talked, the judge looked at his phone and then nodded at him. "They have secret signals." Murphy examined the notebook, his young face growing serious. "Mr. Harrison, if this is true, it's judicial misconduct at minimum," Michael finished. "But Emma, are you absolutely sure about what you saw?" Emma nodded solemnly. "Detective Emma is always sure. The judge is cheating to help the mean people win." As they prepared to return to the courtroom, Michael felt a surge of hope mixed with terror. His 7-year-old daughter might have uncovered evidence of corruption, but proving it would be dangerous for all of them. Judge Crawford was more powerful than any of them imagined. The third day of trial began with an unexpected development. Judge Crawford seemed different, more agitated, checking his phone frequently and casting suspicious glances toward the gallery where Emma sat with her notebook. "Detective Emma is making him nervous," she whispered to Mr. Peanuts. "Good detectives always make bad guys nervous." The morning's testimony focused on the mysterious $921 million that formed the heart of the prosecution's case. Ms. Kelly, the prosecutor, presented complex financial documents that supposedly showed Michael had diverted funds from Harrison Tech's overseas investments into personal accounts. But as Emma watched her father's face, she saw something else, genuine confusion and surprise. He wasn't acting like someone who'd been caught stealing. He was acting like someone who'd never seen these documents before in his life. "Daddy doesn't know about this money," Emma wrote in her notebook. "His face is surprised, not scared." Michael's lawyer, Murphy, struggled with the technical financial testimony. He was clearly out of his depth, fumbling with questions about international banking laws and corporate securities regulations. "Mr. Harrison," Crawford interrupted during cross-examination, "do you recognize your signature on these transfer authorizations?" Michael studied the documents through his reading glasses, his brow furrowed. "Your Honor, this appears to be my signature, but I have no memory of signing these particular documents. The dates don't correspond with any transactions I authorized." Crawford's face reddened. "Are you suggesting these documents are forgeries, Mr. Harrison?" "I'm saying I don't remember signing them, and the amounts far exceed any investments my company made overseas." Emma watched the exchange with fascination. The judge was getting angry again, but this time it seemed like panic mixed with rage. She wrote, "Judge scared when Daddy says papers might be fake." During the lunch recess, Emma overheard a conversation that made her blood run cold. She'd gone to the bathroom with her mother, but returned alone when Sarah stopped to talk with another parent. As Emma walked past a partially open door marked Judge's Chambers, she heard Judge Crawford's voice, tense and urgent. "I don't care what it takes," he was saying into his phone. "The Harrison girl is becoming a problem. She watches everything, writes everything down. If she figures out—" Emma pressed closer to the door, her heart pounding. "No, we can't touch her directly. Too obvious. But maybe we can discredit her father faster, end this trial, before she puts the pieces together." The voice on the other end of the phone was too quiet for Emma to hear, but Crawford's response made her stomach twist with fear. 23 years I've been building this. I'm not letting some 7-year-old brat destroy everything now." Emma backed away from the door, her whole body shaking. The judge wasn't just cheating, he was talking about her like she was dangerous. She had to tell her daddy right away, but as she turned to run, she collided with a court security guard. "Whoa there, little lady, you're not supposed to be back here." Emma looked up at the tall man in uniform, trying to decide if she could trust him. "I was looking for the bathroom." "It's down the hall, sweetie. Let me walk you back to your mom." As they walked, Emma's mind raced. She couldn't tell the security guard what she'd heard. He might tell the judge. She needed to get to her daddy, but court was starting again in 5 minutes. Back in the courtroom, Emma caught her father's eye and held up her notebook, tapping it urgently. Michael nodded slightly, understanding that she had something important to share. The afternoon session focused on character witnesses for Michael. Former employees, community members, and business associates testified about his integrity, generosity, and ethical business practices. But Judge Crawford seemed determined to undermine each positive testimony. "Mr. Martinez," Crawford addressed the security guard, "isn't it true that Mr. Harrison's so-called generosity was actually a pattern of financial mismanagement that contributed to the company's vulnerability to embezzlement?" "No, Your Honor, that's not—" "I'll ask the questions here, Mr. Martinez." Emma watched her father's shoulders slump with each hostile interruption. The judge was destroying every attempt to show that her daddy was a good person. As the day ended, Emma finally got her chance. While Michael packed his briefcase, she slipped him her notebook. "Page 4, Daddy, the most important page." Michael read Emma's careful handwriting. "Judge said I am a problem. He talked on phone about stopping me from figuring out his secrets. He said I am a brat who will destroy everything. He is scared of Detective Emma." Michael's hands trembled as he read his daughter's words. Emma had overheard Judge Crawford discussing her personally, admitting to some kind of conspiracy that involved destroying the Harrison family. "Emma," Michael whispered, kneeling beside her chair, "this is very dangerous. If the judge knows you're watching him, he's the one doing bad things, Daddy, not us." Emma's 7-year-old voice held fierce determination. Detective Emma isn't scared of bullies, even grown-up ones. As they left the courthouse that evening, Michael realized the stakes had just escalated beyond anything he'd imagined. His daughter had uncovered evidence of judicial corruption, but now she was in danger. Judge Crawford knew Emma was onto him, and desperate people did desperate things. The real battle was just beginning. The 4th day of trial brought an unexpected visitor to the Harrison household. Emma was eating her Lucky Charms cereal when the doorbell rang at 7 in the morning. Through the peephole, Sarah saw a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and graying hair. "Mrs. Harrison, I'm Helen Crawford, Judge Crawford's wife. I need to speak with you about your daughter's safety." Sarah's blood ran cold, but she opened the door. Helen Crawford looked exhausted, her hands shaking as she clutched a manila envelope. "I know this sounds crazy," Helen said, glancing nervously over her shoulder, "but Emma is in real danger. My husband, he's not the man I married 30 years ago." Emma appeared in the hallway, her detective instincts immediately alert. "You're the judge's wife. Why are you here?" Helen knelt down to Emma's level. "Because you're a very smart little girl, and smart little girls sometimes discover things that powerful people want to keep secret." "What kind of things?" Emma asked, her brown eyes intense with curiosity. Helen looked at Sarah, then back at Emma. "Things about money that doesn't belong to where it's supposed to be. Things about judges who make deals with bad people. Things that could send my husband to prison for the rest of his life." Sarah pulled Emma closer. "Mrs. Crawford, what exactly are you telling us?" 3 years ago, my husband made an enemy of a very wealthy, very dangerous man named Richard Harrison. No relation to your family, but the same last name. Richard owns Harrison Development Group, and when William ruled against his construction project, Richard swore revenge. Emma's eyes widened. "I found that story on the internet. The judge saved the park from the mean building man." "Yes, sweetheart, but what you didn't find was what happened after. Richard Harrison didn't just get angry. He got even. He's been paying my husband for 3 years to destroy anyone with the Harrison name who crosses his path." The revelation hit like a thunderbolt. Sarah sank onto the couch, pulling Emma with her. "You're saying your husband is taking bribes?" Helen nodded, tears streaming down her face. $921 million in bribes funneled through offshore accounts and shell companies. Richard Harrison has been systematically destroying successful businesses owned by people named Harrison, and my husband has been his weapon in the legal system. Emma jumped up, her notebook in hand. "That's why he hates Daddy. It's not about Daddy doing anything wrong. It's about Daddy having the same name as the building man. Exactly, Helen said. But Emma, your detective work has scared them. Richard knows someone is getting close to the truth, and desperate men do desperate things. Sarah felt sick. Are you saying they might hurt Emma? I'm saying you need to disappear. Today. Right now. Take Emma and run until this is over. But Emma crossed her arms defiantly. No, running away is what scared people do. Detective Emma isn't scared, and besides, Daddy needs our help. Helen opened the manila envelope, revealing bank statements, recorded phone conversations, and photographs of secret meetings. This is everything I've gathered over the past year. Evidence of every bribe, every fixed case, every innocent person my husband destroyed for Richard Harrison's revenge. Emma studied the documents with the same intensity she brought to her homework. Mrs. Crawford, why are you helping us? He's your husband. Helen's voice broke. Because 30 years ago, I married a good man who believed in justice. The man living in my house now isn't that person anymore. He's become a monster, and monsters need to be stopped. At the courthouse, Michael paced nervously outside the courtroom. Murphy had called in sick. Food poisoning, he claimed, leaving Michael to represent himself against charges he still didn't understand. Judge Crawford took the bench with his usual commanding presence. But today, there was something different in his pale blue eyes. Desperation mixed with determination, like a cornered animal preparing for its final stand. Mr. Harrison, Crawford announced, in light of new evidence that has come to my attention, I'm accelerating this trial. We will hear closing arguments today and reach a verdict immediately. Michael shot to his feet. Your Honor, I haven't had adequate time to prepare a defense. My attorney is ill and... The court is not interested in delays, Mr. Harrison. You've had 3 days to present your case. If you're unprepared, that's your own failing. In the gallery, Emma watched the exchange with growing alarm. The judge was rushing everything now, trying to end the trial before she could expose him. She pulled out her notebook and wrote, Judge is scared and moving fast. Detective Emma running out of time. But as Crawford began outlining the accelerated schedule, the courtroom doors burst open. Helen Crawford entered carrying her manila envelope, followed by 2 FBI agents in dark suits. Your Honor, Helen called out, her voice carrying across the stunned courtroom. This trial needs to stop immediately. Crawford's face went white. Helen, what are you doing here? Stopping a travesty of justice, she replied, walking straight to the prosecutor's table. Agent Martinez, Agent Thompson, I believe you'll find these documents very interesting. Emma watched with fascination as her father's case transformed before her eyes. The FBI agents examined Helen's evidence while whispering urgently among themselves. Judge Crawford sat frozen on his bench, his commanding presence crumbling with each passing second. Ladies and gentlemen of the court, Agent Martinez announced, by order of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, this trial is hereby suspended, pending a federal investigation into judicial corruption and conspiracy to commit fraud. The courtroom erupted in chaos, but Emma only had eyes for her father. Michael Harrison stood in the middle of it all, finally understanding that his 7-year-old daughter's detective work had not only saved him, it had exposed a conspiracy that reached far beyond their family. Judge Crawford was no longer a powerful figure of justice. He was just another criminal about to face the consequences of his choices. The FBI field office in downtown Seattle buzzed with activity as Agent Maria Martinez spread Helen Crawford's evidence across a conference table. Emma sat between her parents, swinging her legs from the adult-sized chair, her detective notebook open in front of her. This is remarkable, Agent Martinez said, studying Emma's carefully documented observations. Most trained investigators wouldn't have caught these behavioral patterns and communication signals. Emma beamed with pride. Detective Emma always pays attention to everything. Agent Thompson, a tall man with kind eyes, addressed Michael directly. Mr. Harrison, you're the victim of an elaborate conspiracy spanning 3 years. Richard Harrison of Harrison Development Group has been systematically targeting individuals with your surname as revenge against Judge Crawford's ruling in 2021. Michael shook his head in disbelief. But why target random people named Harrison? That's insane. Revenge doesn't always follow logical patterns, Agent Martinez explained. Richard Harrison lost $200 million when Judge Crawford blocked his Riverside development project. But instead of accepting the loss, he decided to corrupt Crawford and use him to destroy other successful people named Harrison. Emma raised her small hand like she was in school. Agent Martinez, how many other people got hurt? The agent's expression grew somber. 17 businesses owned by people named Harrison have been destroyed through fraudulent lawsuits over the past 3 years. Families ruined, careers ended, lives shattered, all because they shared a surname with someone who had nothing to do with the original conflict. Sarah gasped. 17 families. This is monstrous. Helen Crawford, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, finally spoke. I tried to stop him. Stop. For 2 years, I begged William to end this madness. But the money, $921 million in total payments from Richard Harrison, it corrupted him completely. Agent Thompson opened a thick file folder. Mrs. Crawford, your evidence is comprehensive, but we need to understand the full scope. Walk us through how this conspiracy operated. Helen took a deep breath, steeling herself to betray 3 decades of marriage. Richard Harrison established a network of shell companies and offshore accounts. Every time someone named Harrison achieved business success in the Pacific Northwest, Richard would manufacture a legal case against them. William would ensure the case came to his courtroom, then rule in favor of whatever plaintiff Richard provided. Emma listened intently, her young mind processing the complexity. So the judge would always make the Harrisons lose? Always, sweetheart. Whether the case had merit or not, William would find a way to rule against anyone named Harrison. Bankruptcy, criminal charges, business closure, whatever it took to destroy them completely. Michael felt sick thinking about the other victims. What happened to their families, their children? Agent Martinez consulted her files. 3 families lost their homes. 5 children had to drop out of college when their parents were bankrupted. 2 businesses that employed hundreds of people were shut down, putting entire communities out of work. The weight of the broader conspiracy settled over the room like a dark cloud. Emma, despite her young age, understood the magnitude of what they'd uncovered. Agent Martinez, Emma said solemnly, what happens to the mean judge now? Judge Crawford will be arrested and charged with conspiracy, bribery, obstruction of justice, and violations of civil rights under color of law. He's looking at 25 years to life in federal prison. Helen Crawford began crying quietly. Despite everything her husband had done, 30 years of marriage couldn't be erased overnight. Emma climbed down from her chair and walked over to the judge's wife. Mrs. Crawford, you did the right thing. Sometimes good people have to stop bad people, even when it makes them sad. Helen hugged Emma tightly. You're a very wise little girl. Your father should be proud. Agent Thompson addressed Michael directly. Mr. Harrison, all charges against you are being dropped immediately. Additionally, the federal government will be seeking restitution from Richard Harrison's assets to compensate you and the other victims. But Emma had another question. What about the mean building man, Richard Harrison? What happens to him? Agent Martinez smiled grimly. Richard Harrison will be facing federal conspiracy charges, racketeering violations, and tax evasion. The IRS is very interested in those offshore accounts he's been using to fund this operation. As the meeting concluded, Michael felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what his daughter had uncovered. A 7-year-old's curiosity and keen observation had exposed a multi-million-dollar conspiracy that had destroyed dozens of lives. Emma, Agent Martinez said as they prepared to leave, have you ever considered a career in law enforcement? Emma grinned. Detective Emma is always considering new cases. But first, I want to make sure all the other Harrison families know they're going to be okay. Walking out of the FBI building, Michael lifted his daughter high in the air, spinning her around as Seattle's skyline stretched endlessly before them. "You saved us, sunshine. You saved everyone." Emma hugged her father tightly. "That's what detectives do, Daddy. We find the truth and help the good people win." But even as they celebrated, Emma's sharp mind was already thinking about the next challenge, making sure justice was truly served for all the victims of this cruel conspiracy. The case was solved, but Detective Emma's work was far from over. 1 week later, the Seattle courthouse where Michael Harrison had faced destruction was now the scene of a very different kind of drama. Judge William Crawford sat in handcuffs at the defendant's table, his black robes replaced by an orange jumpsuit, his commanding presence reduced to that of a broken old man. Emma sat in the gallery with her parents, her detective notebook ready to document this final chapter of their ordeal. Federal Judge Patricia Williams presided over the proceedings, her stern but fair demeanor a stark contrast to Crawford's corrupt tyranny. "William Crawford," Judge Williams announced, "you stand before this court charged with conspiracy, bribery, obstruction of justice, and deprivation of rights under color of law. How do you plead?" Crawford's voice was barely audible. "Guilty, Your Honor. Guilty to all charges." Emma wrote in her notebook, "Bad judge admits he did bad things. Justice is happening." The prosecution, led by Assistant U.S. Attorney Rebecca Chen, outlined the full scope of the conspiracy for the record. "Your Honor, over a period of 3 years, the defendant accepted $921 million in bribes from Richard Harrison to systematically destroy innocent families, whose only crime was sharing a surname with Mr. Harrison's business rival. One by one, the victims were called to give impact statements. Michael watched in horror as 17 families detailed the devastation Crawford's corruption had caused in their lives. Margaret Harrison, a 67-year-old widow, spoke through tears. "He took everything. My husband's construction business, our home, our retirement savings. We lost 43 years of hard work because a judge decided our name made us enemies." Thomas Harrison, a young father, held his infant daughter as he testified, "My tech startup employed 15 people. Judge Crawford's fraudulent ruling didn't just bankrupt me, it put 15 families out of work during the pandemic." Emma listened to each story, her young heart breaking for these families who had suffered simply because they shared her last name. She wrote, "Too many people got hurt. This is why Detective Emma's job is important." When it was Michael's turn to speak, he stood slowly, looking directly at his former tormentor. "Your Honor, Judge Crawford didn't just try to destroy my business and my livelihood. He put my 7-year-old daughter in danger. He called her a problem and a brat because she was smart enough to see through his lies. A man who would threaten a child to protect his corruption has lost any claim to mercy." Crawford never looked up during Michael's statement, his shoulders shaking with what might have been shame or fear. But the most powerful moment came when Emma herself asked to address the court. Judge Williams hesitated, then allowed the 7-year-old to speak. Emma stood on her tiptoes to reach the microphone, her clear young voice carrying across the silent courtroom. "Your Honor, my name is Emma Harrison, and I'm 7 years old. The bad judge tried to hurt my daddy and lots of other families just because we have the same name as someone he was mad at. That's not fair, and that's not justice." She paused, looking directly at Crawford. "Mrs. Peterson at school taught us that bullies pick on people because they're scared and sad inside. I think Judge Crawford was scared and sad, but that doesn't make it okay to hurt people." The courtroom was completely silent as Emma continued. "Detective Emma learned that real justice means protecting good people and stopping bad people, no matter how powerful they are. I hope Judge Crawford learns that lesson too, even if it's too late for all the families he hurt." As Emma returned to her seat, there wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. Even the court reporter had stopped typing to wipe away tears. Judge Williams addressed Crawford directly. "Mr. Crawford, in 35 years on the federal bench, I have never seen such a systematic abuse of judicial power. You perverted the very foundation of our legal system for personal gain. Crawford finally looked up, his pale eyes meeting Judge Williams' stern gaze. The families you destroyed trusted the system to protect them. Instead, they found a predator in judicial robes who sold their lives for profit. Your actions have not only harmed 17 innocent families, they have damaged public faith in the entire judicial system. Emma watched as Judge Williams delivered the sentence that would define the rest of Crawford's life. William Crawford, I hereby sentence you to life in federal prison without the possibility of parole. Additionally, you are ordered to forfeit all assets and property obtained through this conspiracy. The gavel's bang echoed through the courtroom like thunder. Crawford was led away in handcuffs, his 3 decades of judicial power reduced to nothing in an instant. As the courtroom emptied, Agent Martinez approached the Harrison family. Emma, I wanted you to know, Richard Harrison was arrested this morning at his estate in Oregon. He'll be facing trial next month for his role in this conspiracy. Emma nodded solemnly. Good. Everyone who does bad things should face justice. Outside the courthouse, Michael lifted his daughter high in the air, the same gesture he'd made a week earlier when their nightmare began to end. You did it, Sunshine. You brought justice for everyone. Emma hugged her father tightly, then looked back at the courthouse where so much drama had unfolded. Detective Emma's first big case is solved, Daddy. But there are lots more bad people out there who need to be stopped. Michael laughed, amazed by his daughter's resilience and determination. One case at a time, sweetheart, one case at a time. But Emma was already thinking about her next investigation, her sharp mind always ready to fight injustice wherever she found it. 6 months after Judge Crawford's sentencing, life had returned to something resembling normal for the Harrison family. Michael had started a new company, Harrison Justice Solutions, specializing in helping small businesses navigate legal challenges. Emma had returned to 2nd grade, where she'd become something of a celebrity among her classmates. But on this crisp September morning, their quiet suburban routine was interrupted by an unexpected visitor. The doorbell rang at 8:30 a.m., just as Emma was finishing her breakfast and Michael was reviewing client files. Through the peephole, they saw a distinguished elderly man in an expensive suit, flanked by 2 younger associates. Mr. Harrison, my name is Alexander Morrison. I represent the families affected by the Crawford conspiracy. We'd like to speak with you and Emma about a very important matter. Michael opened the door cautiously, Emma peeking out from behind his legs. Morrison smiled warmly at Emma. You must be the famous Detective Emma. I've heard remarkable things about your investigative skills. Emma studied the visitors with her characteristic intensity. Are you good lawyers or bad lawyers? Morrison chuckled. I hope we're the good kind, young lady. We're here because the 17 families whose lives were destroyed by Judge Crawford have come together to create something unprecedented. They gathered in the living room, where Morrison opened a leather briefcase and pulled out an official-looking document. Mr. Harrison, the federal government has recovered $847 million from Richard Harrison's assets and Crawford's hidden accounts. After legal fees and administrative costs, there's approximately $750 million to be distributed among the victims. Michael's eyes widened. That's an enormous amount of money, indeed. But here's what makes this situation unique. All 17 families have voted unanimously to establish the Emma Harrison Foundation for Justice, with your daughter as the inspiration and guiding vision. Emma looked confused. What's a foundation? Morrison knelt down to her level. It's an organization that uses money to help people and make the world better. The families you helped save want to create something that will prevent other innocent people from being hurt by corrupt officials. One of Morrison's associates, a woman named Dr. Sarah Kim, addressed Emma directly. We want to build schools that teach children how to recognize injustice and corruption, just like you did. We want to train young detectives to protect their communities. Emma's eyes lit up with excitement. Schools for detective kids? That sounds amazing. Michael felt overwhelmed. I don't understand. Why would these families give up their compensation to create a foundation? Morrison's expression grew serious. Because your 7-year-old daughter didn't just solve their individual cases, she exposed a systemic problem. Corrupt judges, bought prosecutors, wealthy criminals who think they can purchase justice. Emma's investigation revealed that these problems exist far beyond the Crawford case. Dr. Kim pulled out a tablet showing news articles from around the country. Since your story broke, 17 other judicial corruption cases have been uncovered. Emma's methods, careful observation, detailed documentation, pattern recognition, have become a model for detecting corruption in the legal system. Emma studied the tablet, her young mind processing the implications. Other kids could learn to be detectives too? Exactly, Morrison said. The Emma Harrison Foundation would establish detective training programs in schools, teach children how to identify injustice, and create a network of young observers who could help protect their communities. Michael looked at his daughter, amazed by how her simple curiosity had grown into something with national implications. What exactly are you proposing? Dr. Kim opened a folder filled with architectural drawings and program outlines. We want to build the Emma Harrison Detective Academy in Seattle, with satellite programs in schools across the country. Children would learn critical thinking, evidence gathering, legal basics, and ethical reasoning. Emma jumped up excitedly. Could I help teach the other kids? Morrison smiled. Emma, you wouldn't just help teach, you'd be the chief inspiration officer. Every child in these programs would learn about how Detective Emma saved 17 families by being brave, smart, and determined. But Emma's excitement was tempered by a serious question. Mr. Morrison, what if bad people tried to stop the detective schools? Morrison exchanged glances with his associates. That's a very insightful question, Emma. There are people who benefit from corruption and injustice, and they might not want children learning how to expose them. Then we'll have to be extra careful and extra smart, Emma declared with 7-year-old confidence. Detective Emma isn't scared of bullies, remember. Dr. Kim pulled out one final document, a mock-up of a children's book titled Detective Emma and the Case of the Corrupt Judge. We also want to tell your story, Emma. Children around the world could read about how a 7-year-old girl brought down a conspiracy worth nearly $1 billion. Emma studied the colorful illustrations showing a young girl with a notebook, observing adults in courtrooms and taking careful notes. Will it help other kids be brave when grown-ups are doing bad things? That's exactly what we hope, Morrison said. Michael felt tears welling in his eyes as he realized how completely his daughter's courage had transformed not just their lives, but potentially thousands of other lives across the country. Emma, this is your decision. Do you want to help create these detective schools? Emma looked out the window at her quiet suburban neighborhood, then back at the adults who were offering to turn her childhood adventure into a force for justice across the nation. Detective Emma accepts the case, she announced solemnly. But I have one condition. Morrison leaned forward. What's that, Emma? Every detective school has to have a rule that kids are never too young to stand up for what's right. Sometimes grown-ups forget that, but kids shouldn't. Morrison smiled and extended his hand for a formal handshake. Deal, Detective Emma. Deal. As they shook hands, Michael realized that his daughter's greatest adventure was just beginning. 2 years later, the Emma Harrison Detective Academy had become a phenomenon that exceeded everyone's wildest expectations. What started as a single school in Seattle had expanded to 43 locations across the United States, with international programs being developed in 12 countries. Emma, now 9 years old and in 4th grade, stood at the podium of the Academy's main auditorium, addressing an audience of 500 children aged 7 to 12. Her confidence had grown enormously, but she still maintained the earnest curiosity that had made her such an effective detective. Remember, she told the young faces looking up at her, detective rule number 1, always pay attention to what people do, not just what they say. Actions tell the truth better than words. In the audience, Michael watched his daughter with pride that threatened to overwhelm him. The shy 7-year-old, who had once hidden behind his legs, was now inspiring hundreds of children to become guardians of justice in their own communities. Dr. Sarah Kim, now the Academy's director, joined Emma at the podium. "Children, I want you to hear about some of the amazing detective work your fellow students have accomplished this year." She gestured to a group of students in the front row. Tommy Chen, age 8, noticed that his school's cafeteria money was disappearing and documented evidence that led to the arrest of a dishonest administrator who had stolen $50,000. Tommy waved shyly as the audience applauded. Maria Gonzalez, age 10, observed suspicious behavior at her local bank and helped FBI agents uncover an embezzlement scheme worth $3 million. Emma beamed with pride at her fellow young detectives. Each success story validated her belief that children could be powerful forces for justice when properly trained and supported. But the most significant moment came when Dr. Kim introduced a special guest. "Children, I want you to meet someone very important. This is Judge Patricia Williams, the federal judge who sentenced the corrupt Judge Crawford 2 years ago." Judge Williams took the microphone, her stern but kind face scanning the audience of young detectives. "Emma Harrison and all of you young investigators represent something revolutionary in our justice system," she began. "You're proving that corruption and injustice can't hide from careful observers, regardless of their age." She looked directly at Emma. "Since the Emma Harrison Detective Academy was established, student investigations have led to the exposure of 47 cases of corruption, fraud, or abuse of power. You've saved taxpayers over $200 million and helped send 32 criminals to prison." The statistics were staggering, but Emma's focus was on something more personal. "Judge Williams," she said, raising her hand, "what happened to all the Harrison families that got hurt by the bad judge?" Judge Williams smiled warmly. "That's exactly the kind of question a good detective should ask, Emma. Every single family has been fully compensated and has rebuilt their lives. Margaret Harrison opened a new business. Thomas Harrison's tech company is now employing over 100 people. Every family is not just surviving, they're thriving." The audience erupted in cheers, but Emma had another question. "What about Judge Crawford? Is he still in prison?" Judge Williams' expression grew more serious. "William Crawford will remain in federal prison for the rest of his life. But Emma, something remarkable happened last month. He requested a meeting with federal prosecutors to provide information about other corrupt judges he knew about." Emma's eyes widened. "He's helping catch more bad judges? His information has already led to investigations of 12 other potentially corrupt officials across 3 states. Even from prison, the consequences of your investigation continue to expand." Dr. Kim addressed the audience again. "This is why your work matters so much. Every corrupt official you help expose makes the whole system more honest and fair." But Emma had been thinking about something bigger. She walked to the microphone with the confidence of someone twice her age. "Dr. Kim, Judge Williams, everyone, I think Detective Emma needs to tell you about her biggest idea yet." The auditorium fell silent. Hundreds of young faces focused on their inspiration and leader. "What if we didn't just train kids to catch bad grown-ups? What if we trained grown-ups to be better grown-ups in the first place?" Judge Williams leaned forward, intrigued. "What do you mean, Emma?" "I mean, what if police officers and lawyers and judges and mayors had to take classes from kids? What if they had to promise to a 7-year-old that they'll always do the right thing?" The concept was so simple and yet so profound that it left the adults speechless. Emma continued, her young voice carrying remarkable authority. "Detective Emma thinks that grown-ups forget what it feels like to be small and scared. But if they had to look a kid in the eyes and promise to protect people instead of hurting them, maybe they'd remember." Dr. Kim exchanged amazed glances with Judge Williams. "Emma, are you proposing that we create ethics programs where children train adults?" "Yes, kids know when someone is lying or being mean. Kids know what fair looks like. Maybe grown-ups in important jobs should have to pass a test given by kids." The idea was revolutionary. Children not just as observers of the justice system, but as teachers and guardians of its ethical foundations. Judge Williams stood up, addressing Emma directly. Emma Harrison, in my 40 years in the legal system, I have never heard a more important proposal. Would you be willing to work with me to develop this program? Emma grinned, the same confident smile that had carried her through her first terrifying investigation 2 years ago. Detective Emma accepts the case, Your Honor, but I'll need lots of help from all my fellow detectives. The auditorium erupted in cheers as 500 young voices shouted their agreement. Emma looked out at the sea of determined faces and realized that her greatest adventure wasn't behind her. It was just beginning. The little girl who had once hidden behind her father's legs was now leading a revolution in justice, one careful observation at a time. 5 years had passed since 7-year-old Emma Harrison first noticed something wrong in Judge Crawford's courtroom. Now 12 years old and a 7th grader, Emma stood before the United States Senate Judiciary Committee in Washington, D.C., as the youngest person ever to testify before Congress on judicial reform. The marble halls of the Capitol building echoed with her footsteps as she walked toward the hearing room, flanked by her father Michael and Dr. Sarah Kim. The shy little girl who once carried Mr. Peanuts in her backpack now moved with quiet confidence, her detective notebook replaced by a leather portfolio filled with comprehensive reform proposals. The committee recognizes Emma Harrison, founder of the National Youth Justice Initiative, announced Senator Rebecca Martinez, the committee chairwoman. Emma approached the witness table, adjusting the microphone to her height with practiced ease. Behind her, the gallery was packed with young detectives from across the country, their bright faces focused on their leader and inspiration. Senators, 5 years ago, I was a 7-year-old girl who noticed something wrong in a courtroom. Today, I'm 12, and I'm here to tell you how we can make sure what happened to my family never happens to anyone else again. She opened her portfolio and pulled out a bound document nearly 2 inches thick. This is the National Youth Oversight Protocol, developed by 847 young detectives from all 50 states. We've spent 3 years studying corruption cases, interviewing victims, and designing a system where children help keep adults accountable. Senator James Thompson from Texas leaned forward. Ms. Harrison, can you explain how children would realistically oversee adult officials? Emma's response was immediate and confident. Senator, with respect, you're asking the wrong question. You should ask why we need children to oversee adults in the first place. A ripple of quiet laughter went through the hearing room. The answer is simple. Children see things adults miss. We notice when someone's behavior doesn't match their words. We ask questions that adults are too polite or too scared to ask. And most importantly, we're not impressed by titles or power. We only care about fairness. Senator Martinez nodded approvingly. What specifically are you proposing? Emma stood up, her voice carrying clearly through the microphone system. First, every federal judge, prosecutor, and high-level justice official would be assigned a youth oversight panel of 5 children aged 8 to 14 from their district. These children would observe courtroom proceedings, review case patterns, and report suspicious behavior to a special federal youth advocate. The senators exchanged surprised glances. The proposal was more sophisticated than anyone had expected. Second, all justice officials would be required to attend monthly Ethics Through Young Eyes sessions, where they explain their decisions to children and answer questions about fairness and integrity. Senator Thompson looked skeptical. Miss Harrison, don't you think this could interfere with the serious business of the courts? Emma's brown eyes flashed with the same intensity she'd shown at age 7. Senator, with respect, Judge Crawford thought his business was too serious for a 7-year-old to understand. He was wrong. In 5 years, youth oversight programs have identified 63 cases of corruption that adult authorities missed. She pulled out a chart showing statistics that made the senators lean forward in their chairs. Youth-identified corruption cases have recovered $1, $2 billion in stolen funds, prevented 47 wrongful convictions, and led to the removal of 28 corrupt officials. The question isn't whether children should be involved, it's why they weren't involved sooner. Dr. Kim, sitting in the gallery, wiped away tears of pride as she watched Emma present years of research and advocacy with the skill of a seasoned professional. Emma continued, "But our most important proposal is the National Children's Justice Hotline. Any child, anywhere in America, could call or text when they see injustice. Trained youth advocates would investigate and coordinate with federal authorities." Senator Martinez asked, "How would you prevent false accusations or misunderstandings?" "The same way adult investigators prevent them, through careful documentation, multiple witnesses, and thorough verification." "Children aren't careless with accusations, Senator. We understand that words have power." Emma paused, her voice growing softer but more intense. 5 years ago, 17 families were destroyed by corruption worth $921 million. If there had been a system for children to report suspicious behavior, Judge Crawford's conspiracy would have been stopped in months, not years. She looked directly at each senator in turn. How many families could have been saved if someone had listened to the children who noticed something was wrong? The hearing room was completely silent, except for the soft clicking of cameras capturing this historic moment. Senator Martinez spoke for the committee. "Miss Harrison, your proposals will be given serious consideration. But I want to ask you something personal. What drives you to continue this work?" Emma thought for a moment, then smiled the same confident smile that had carried her through her first terrifying investigation. "Senator, Detective Emma learned something important when she was 7 years old. Being small doesn't mean being powerless. Being young doesn't mean being wrong, and being scared doesn't mean giving up." She gestured toward the gallery filled with young faces. "Every one of these kids represents a family that corruption didn't destroy, a criminal who got caught, or a victim who got justice. We're not trying to replace adults, we're trying to help adults be better." Emma closed her portfolio and looked directly into the television cameras, broadcasting live across the nation. "To every kid watching this, you're never too young to stand up for what's right. You're never too small to make a difference, and you're never alone when you're fighting for justice." As applause thundered through the hearing room, Michael Harrison watched his daughter with amazement and pride. The little girl who had once hidden behind his legs was now addressing the entire nation, leading a revolution in justice that started with a 7-year-old's simple observation that something wasn't fair. 6 months later, the Youth Oversight Protocol was signed into law, establishing the first systematic role for children in overseeing the American justice system. Detective Emma's greatest case was complete, but her legacy would protect families for generations to come. Standing on the Capitol steps after the historic vote, Emma looked out at the sunset over Washington, D.C., and smiled. "Detective Emma's work is never done," she said to herself, already thinking about her next case. In the distance, the bells of justice rang out across America, carried forward by the clear, brave voices of children who refused to let injustice hide in the shadows. The little detective who had saved. Millionaire loses an $8 2B company and falls into despair until a 6-year-old orphan girl makes a proposal that breaks his heart and changes his life forever. Before we reveal this heart-rending story of solitude and sorrow, share where you're watching from and subscribe for more moving tales. The mahogany doors of Harrison Steel Industries burst open as federal agents carried out boxes of evidence, while news crews swarmed the sidewalk like hungry wolves. Marcus Harrison, 42, stood frozen across the street, watching 23 years of blood, sweat, and dreams crumble into dust. His $8 $2 billion empire gone in 72 hours. Mr. Harrison, any comment on the embezzlement charges? Reporters thrust microphones toward his face as camera flashes exploded around him. Marcus pushed through the mob, his usually pristine Armani suit wrinkled and stained with coffee from his sleepless nights. The betrayal cut deeper than any business loss. Richard Castellanos, his childhood friend, his trusted CFO, the man who'd been best man at his wedding, had vanished to the Cayman Islands with nearly $2 billion in company funds. 20 years of friendship destroyed by greed. Marcus's phone buzzed incessantly. Angry investors, panicked board members, ruthless creditors circling like vultures. He turned it off and drove aimlessly through downtown Seattle, rain hammering his Bentley's windshield. The FBI had frozen his personal accounts. His wife Jennifer had filed for divorce that morning, taking their twin daughters to her mother's house in Vancouver. Everything he'd worked for, everyone he'd loved, gone. The mansion would be seized next week. The yacht, the vacation homes, the art collection, all of it would be auctioned to pay creditors. Marcus Harrison, once featured on Forbes's cover as Seattle's Steel King, was now facing bankruptcy and possible prison time. He parked near Pike Place Market, needing air to breathe, space to think. The rain soaked through his expensive jacket as he wandered the narrow alley behind the market, past overflowing dumpsters and puddles reflecting neon signs. That's when he heard it, a soft whimper coming from between two dumpsters. In a soggy cardboard box that once held bananas sat the most heartbreaking sight Marcus had ever seen. A little girl, maybe 6 years old, with matted blonde hair and eyes like precious sapphires. She wore a torn pink dress, 3 sizes too big, and clutched a stuffed rabbit missing an ear. Despite the cold rain soaking through the cardboard, she wasn't crying, just sitting there with a dignity that broke Marcus's heart. When she looked up at him, those innocent blue eyes seemed to see straight through to his soul. "Are you an angel?" she whispered, her voice trembling from cold and hunger. "Mama said angels come when people need them most, and I've been praying really hard." Marcus knelt beside the box, his knees touching the wet pavement. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Emma Collins," she said softly. "I'm 6 3/4 years old. I've been waiting here for someone special to find me." She tilted her head, studying his face with those impossibly wise eyes. "Are you the man who lost all his money on TV?" The question stunned Marcus. "How do you know about that?" Emma struggled to stand in the cramped box, her tiny frame shaking. "I heard the mean reporters talking about Harrison Steele. They said you lost everything because someone you trusted stole your money." She stepped closer, her small hand reaching toward his. "But I can help you get it all back." "Emma, where are your parents?" Fresh tears mixed with raindrops on her cheeks. "Mama went to heaven last month. She got really sick with cancer. The foster people were mean. They said I was weird because I'm good with numbers. So I ran away." She looked up at him with desperate hope. "If you give me a real home with a bed and food, I promise I'll save your company. I already figured out where your stolen money is hiding." Marcus stared at this extraordinary child, wondering if grief and stress had finally driven him insane. Marcus gently lifted Emma from the cardboard box, shocked at how light she felt, like holding a bird with hollow bones. When was the last time this child had eaten a proper meal? Her tiny body was trembling, whether from cold, hunger, or fear he couldn't tell. "Emma, you're just a little girl. How could you possibly know anything about my company's finances?" She wrapped her thin arms around his neck as he carried her toward his car. "I'm not like other kids, Mr. Marcus. Mama said I was special, that I could see patterns in numbers that grown-ups couldn't see. She called it a gift, but it scared her sometimes." Marcus settled Emma into his Bentley's back seat, cranking up the heat and wrapping her in his jacket. "What kind of patterns?" Emma's eyes grew bright with excitement. "Numbers talk to me. They make shapes and colors and music in my head. When numbers are lying or trying to hide something, they sound all wrong, like when someone sings off key." Despite everything, Marcus found himself smiling. This child's imagination was incredible. "And you think you heard something wrong about my company?" "I saw it on the TV at the library before the mean lady kicked me out," Emma said seriously. "The news showed bank transfer numbers when they talked about your friend taking the money, but the numbers were singing a secret song." Marcus felt his smile fade. "What kind of song?" Emma closed her eyes, as if listening to music only she could hear. The banking codes spelled out letters when you put them in the right order. They said, "Remember our promise, old friend?" Over and over again. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He and Richard had made a sacred promise when they were 12 years old, blood brothers building a fort in Richard's backyard. They'd sworn to always split everything 50-50, to never let money come between them, to always have each other's backs no matter what. "That's impossible," Marcus whispered. No one knew about that promise. Richard and I never told anyone. Emma opened her eyes, looking at him with startling wisdom. "Maybe your friend didn't mean to leave that message. Maybe the numbers just came out that way because he was thinking about you when he moved the money." Marcus started the engine with shaking hands. "Emma, even if what you're saying is true, which is impossible, that doesn't help me. Richard still stole everything and disappeared." "No, but that's the funny part," Emma said, bouncing slightly in her seat. "The number patterns show he didn't really steal the money. He moved it, but he hid it somewhere safe, like he was protecting it from someone else." "What do you mean?" Emma's voice dropped to a whisper. "I think someone bad was coming to steal your company's money, so your friend took it first to keep it safe. But then something happened to him before he could give it back." Marcus pulled over, his heart pounding. "Emma, that's actually possible. The FBI said Richard's boat was found empty off the coast of Mexico. They assume he faked his death, but what if he didn't fake it?" Emma asked quietly. "What if the real bad guys found him?" For the first time in 3 days, Marcus felt something besides despair. If Richard had been trying to protect the company assets, if he'd left coded messages in the banking transfers, then maybe, just maybe, there was hope. "Emma, you said you could help me find the money. How?" She smiled, and for a moment, the haunted look in her eyes disappeared. "First, you need to buy me that bed you promised. Then we need to visit the place where numbers live, a big computer with lots of screens, and then we're going to follow the number trail your friend left behind." Marcus stared at this impossible child. "You really think you can crack a $2 billion financial conspiracy?" Emma nodded confidently. "Numbers don't lie, Mr. Marcus. People do, but numbers always tell the truth if you know how to listen to them." As they drove through the rain-soaked streets of Seattle, Marcus found himself believing in miracles for the first time in his adult life. 2 hours later, Marcus sat across from Emma in a corner booth at Danny's diner, watching her attack a plate of scrambled eggs, pancakes, and bacon like she hadn't eaten in weeks. The sight made his chest tight with emotion. When had he last felt such protective instincts toward another human being? "Slow down, sweetheart," he said gently, sliding a glass of chocolate milk toward her. "The food isn't going anywhere." Emma looked up, syrup on her chin, embarrassed. "Sorry, Mr. Marcus. I haven't had real food since Mama died. The group home only gave us stale sandwiches and watery soup. And when I ran away, I only had the crackers from Mama's purse." Marcus felt rage building in his chest. How could anyone neglect a child like this? "Emma, tell me more about how numbers talk to you. When did this start?" She wiped her mouth carefully with the napkin, suddenly looking much older than 6. "Mama said I was doing math problems when I was 3 that most kids couldn't do until they were teenagers. But it's not like school math. It's like the numbers have personalities and they want to tell me stories." "What kind of stories?" Emma took a sip of chocolate milk, leaving a small mustache that made Marcus's heart melt. "Like when Mama was paying bills, I could see which companies were lying about how much we owed. The fake numbers looked angry and red in my head. Or when we went to the grocery store, I could tell which prices were mistakes before the cashier figured it out." Marcus leaned forward, fascinated despite himself. "And you saw something like that in the news about my company?" Emma nodded excitedly. "The reporter lady showed bank routing numbers on the screen when she talked about your friend moving the money. But the numbers were all wrong. They had extra digits that didn't belong, and when I arranged them in my head, they made letters. The message about our childhood promise. But that's not all," Emma said, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "There were other number letters too. They said, 'Danger coming Tuesday,' and 'Trust no one in uniform,' and 'Follow the steel trail.'" Marcus felt his blood run cold. "Emma, are you absolutely certain about this?" She nodded solemnly. "Numbers don't lie, remember? Your friend was trying to warn you about something that was supposed to happen on a Tuesday." Marcus pulled out his phone and checked the calendar. "Emma, the FBI raid on my company. It happened on a Tuesday." Emma's eyes went wide. "So your friend knew someone was coming to steal your money, and he took it first to hide it somewhere safe, but then the bad guys made it look like he was the thief. But who are the bad guys? And why would they frame Richard?" Emma finished her last bite of pancakes, thinking hard. The number pattern said, "Trust no one in uniform." That means police or FBI or security guards, someone who's supposed to catch bad guys, but is actually a bad guy themselves. Marcus felt the world shifting beneath his feet. Could someone in law enforcement be behind the destruction of his company? Someone with the power to orchestrate raids, freeze accounts, and make evidence disappear? "Emma, if you're right about this, we could both be in serious danger." She reached across the table and patted his hand with her small fingers. "Don't worry, Mr. Marcus. We're going to catch the real bad guys and save your company. But first, you promised me a bed, remember?" Despite everything, Marcus found himself smiling. "Yes, sweetheart. Let's get you that bed." As they left the diner, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that this 6-year-old genius had just uncovered a conspiracy that went far deeper than simple corporate embezzlement. But he also felt something he hadn't experienced in days: hope and a fierce determination to protect the extraordinary child who'd literally appeared in his darkest hour, like an answer to prayers he'd forgotten how to say. Marcus drove through the rain-soaked streets toward the upscale Bellevue shopping district, glancing frequently in the rearview mirror at Emma, who sat carefully buckled in the back seat, still clutching her one-eared stuffed rabbit. She'd been quiet since leaving the diner, staring out the window with those penetrating blue eyes that seemed to see far more than any 6-year-old should. "What's your rabbit's name?" Marcus asked, trying to lighten the mood. Emma held up the worn toy. "Mr. Hopscotch. Mama gave him to me when I was born. He lost his ear when the foster family's mean dog tried to eat him." She hugged the rabbit tighter. "But Mr. Hopscotch is brave. He helps me think better when the numbers get too loud in my head." Marcus's heart clenched. "The numbers get loud? Sometimes there are so many number voices talking at once that it hurts my head. Mama used to sing to me when that happened, but now I just hold Mr. Hopscotch and tell him what the numbers are saying. He's a very good listener." They pulled into the parking lot of Children's Palace, an upscale furniture store specializing in kids' rooms. Emma pressed her nose against the window, eyes wide with wonder. "Is this really for me?" she whispered. "Every little girl deserves a beautiful bedroom," Marcus said, though his heart was heavy, knowing his mansion would be seized within days. Where would Emma sleep then? Where would either of them go? Inside the store, Emma moved through the displays like she was walking through a magical kingdom. She ran her small fingers over silk comforters and polished wood, tested the springiness of mattresses, and marveled at canopy beds that looked like fairy tale castles. "This one," she said finally, stopping before a white daybed with intricate scrollwork and soft lavender bedding. "It looks like the bed Mama described to me from when she was little." The salesman quoted a price that would have been pocket change to Marcus a week ago, but now represented a significant chunk of his remaining cash. He didn't hesitate. "We'll take it, plus sheets, pillows, everything she needs. Can you deliver it today?" "Certainly, sir." "Where shall we send it?" Marcus gave his mansion's address, watching Emma's face light up as the salesman wrote up the order. She wandered over to a display of desk lamps while Marcus handled the payment. "Mr. Marcus," Emma called softly, "can you come look at this?" She was standing before a desk lamp with a base made of clear crystal filled with colored liquid that moved in mesmerizing patterns when touched. But Emma wasn't looking at the lamp. She was staring at the price tag with an expression of intense concentration. "What is it, sweetheart?" "The numbers on this price tag," she whispered. "They're singing the same song as the bank numbers on TV." Marcus looked at the simple price tag, 127s, $50. "Emma, what do you mean?" Emma traced the numbers with her finger. 12750. In my number language, that spells Harry. And look at the item number, 89335. That spells INTRO. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. Harry intro? Emma? That doesn't make sense. But it does! Emma's voice rose with excitement. Then she caught herself and whispered, Harry was what your friend Richard called you when you were kids, right? Like Harry Harrison. Marcus nearly dropped his credit card. Richard was the only person who'd ever called him Harry, a nickname from their childhood that had been forgotten for 20 years. And intro means beginning, Emma continued. Like the beginning of a message. Mr. Marcus, I think your friend is leaving you clues in lots of places, not just the bank transfers. Marcus knelt down to Emma's level, his hands shaking. Emma, this is just a coincidence. Price tags are made by computers, not by Richard. Emma shook her head firmly. Numbers don't have coincidences. If the same pattern appears in different places, it means someone is controlling those places. Someone with access to lots of computers. The implications hit Marcus like a tidal wave. If Richard was somehow manipulating price tags in random stores, he'd need incredible access to retail computer systems. That level of access would require either massive hacking skills or inside help, Marcus whispered. Someone with legitimate access to multiple business networks. Emma nodded sagely. The real bad guy isn't just stealing from your company, Mr. Marcus. They're stealing from lots of companies. And your friend found out, so they had to make him disappear and make you the scapegoat. And as they left the store with promises of same-day delivery, Marcus realized that Emma hadn't just found him in that alley by accident. Somehow, impossibly, Richard had guided her there. His old friend was alive, in hiding, and using a 6-year-old mathematical genius to communicate a desperate message. The question was, would they figure out the message before the real criminals figured out what they knew? Marcus's waterfront mansion looked like something from a fairy tale as they drove through the wrought-iron gates, its Gothic spires and bay windows reflecting the late afternoon sun breaking through Seattle's perpetual clouds. Emma pressed her face against the car window, her breath fogging the glass. You really live in a castle, she whispered in awe. Not for much longer, Marcus said bitterly, thinking of the foreclosure notices already filed. The bank will take it next week. Emma turned to look at him with those impossibly wise eyes. No, they won't. Because we're going to find your money and catch the bad guys first. Her absolute confidence was both heartbreaking and inspiring. Marcus parked in the circular driveway, noting how the mansion's grandeur now felt hollow and cold. What was the point of 37 rooms when you had no family to fill them with? Inside, Emma's eyes went wide as she took in the marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and spiral staircase that curved toward the second floor like something from a movie set. This is bigger than the whole group home and the library put together, she breathed. Marcus showed her to what had been his daughter's favorite guest room when they visited, a spacious suite with tall windows overlooking Puget Sound, its own bathroom, and a walk-in closet that could house a small family. When the furniture delivery arrived an hour later, Emma supervised the placement of her new bed with the seriousness of an interior designer. Can it face the window so I can see the water when I wake up? She asked the delivery men politely. Water helps me think better. After the workers left, Emma sat on her new bed and pulled out sheets of paper and colored pencils she'd somehow acquired during their shopping trip. Within minutes, she was drawing complex mathematical diagrams that looked more like abstract art than anything recognizable. Emma, what are you working on now? She looked up, pencil still moving across the paper. I'm mapping all the places we've seen the number messages. Your company, the bank transfers, the lamp price tag. I think there are more clues we haven't found yet. Marcus sat beside her, studying the intricate drawings. Lines of numbers flowed across the pages in spirals and geometric shapes, connected by arrows and symbols that seemed to pulse with hidden meaning. Where did you learn to draw like this? Mama taught me before she got really sick. She was smart like me, but the numbers scared her. She said they made her head hurt and sometimes told her bad things about people. Emma's pencil stopped moving. She could tell when people were lying just by looking at the numbers around them. Marcus felt a chill. Numbers around them? Emma nodded matter-of-factly. Everyone has numbers floating around them like invisible clouds. Most people can't see them, but Mama could, and I can too. Lying makes the numbers turn dark and angry. What do my numbers look like? Emma studied his face intently for a long moment. Sad grey ones mixed with bright gold ones. The grey ones are from losing everything, but the gold ones are from wanting to help me. Gold numbers are the best kind. They mean someone has a good heart. Before Marcus could respond, Emma's expression changed dramatically. She dropped her pencil and grabbed his arm. "Mr. Marcus, someone's coming. Someone with really scary red numbers all around them." Marcus listened, but heard nothing except the sound of waves against the shore. "Emma, I don't—" The doorbell rang. Emma scrambled behind the bed, clutching Mr. Hopscotch. "Don't let them in," she whispered urgently. "The red numbers mean they want to hurt us." Marcus walked downstairs, his heart pounding. Through the front door's frosted glass, he could see the silhouette of a woman in uniform. When he opened the door, he found himself facing a Seattle police detective with kind brown eyes and a badge that read, S. Rodriguez. "Mr. Harrison, I'm Detective Rodriguez. We need to discuss the missing child case filed yesterday." Marcus fought to keep his expression neutral. "Missing child? 6-year-old Emma Collins escaped from state custody 3 days ago. We have reason to believe she might have contacted you." Detective Rodriguez stepped closer, her voice professional but concerned. "Mr. Harrison, harboring a runaway minor could add serious criminal charges to your current legal situation." "I haven't seen any missing children, Detective." Rodriguez studied his face carefully. "Mr. Harrison, that child is in serious danger. There are people looking for her who don't have her best interests at heart. If she's contacted you, the safest thing for everyone would be to let us take her into protective custody immediately." Before Marcus could answer, Emma appeared at the top of the stairs, moving with surprising composure despite her earlier fear. "It's okay, Mr. Marcus," she called down. "I need to talk to her." Detective Rodriguez looked up at Emma with what appeared to be genuine relief. "Emma, sweetheart, thank God you're safe. We've been so worried about you." But as Emma descended the stairs, her small voice carried a chilling message. "You're lying, lady. Your red numbers are getting darker." Detective Rodriguez knelt down to Emma's eye level, her expression shifting to practiced concern. "Emma, sweetheart, I know you've been through a terrible trauma losing your mother. Sometimes when children are frightened and hungry, their imaginations can play tricks on them." Emma stopped 3 steps from the bottom of the staircase, clutching the banister with white knuckles. "I'm not imagining anything. The numbers around you are bright red, and they're spinning really fast. That means you're scared and angry and lying all at the same time." Marcus moved protectively toward the stairs. Something in Emma's voice, a mature certainty that no 6-year-old should possess, sent ice through his veins. "Detective Rodriguez, perhaps this isn't the best time," Marcus began. But the detective cut him off. "Mr. Harrison, this child has been missing for 3 days. The longer she's away from proper care, the more psychological damage she'll suffer." Rodriguez stood slowly, her hand moving almost unconsciously toward her service weapon. "I need to take her back to protective services immediately." Emma descended the remaining steps and walked directly to Marcus, slipping her tiny hand into his much larger one. The gesture was so trusting, so natural, that Marcus felt his heart break and mend simultaneously. "She's not really a police lady," Emma whispered, loud enough for Rodriguez to hear. "Her badge number connects to the same computer systems that your friend Richard was tracking. She's one of the bad guys." Detective Rodriguez's professional mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. "Emma, you're a very smart little girl, but you're confused. Mr. Harrison is in serious legal trouble, and staying with him will only put you in more danger." "Prove you're really police," Emma said with startling authority. Call your captain and let me talk to him on your radio. Rodriguez hesitated, just for a second, but long enough for Marcus to notice. Emma, that's not how police procedures work. Yes, it is, Emma replied confidently. I learned about police procedures at the library. Real police officers always radio their superiors when they find missing children. But you haven't touched your radio at all. Marcus felt the pieces clicking into place with terrifying clarity. You're not here officially, are you, detective? Rodriguez's hand moved closer to her weapon. Mr. Harrison, I'm going to need you to step away from the child. The numbers are getting really scary now, Emma whispered, pressing closer to Marcus. She's planning to hurt us both. Marcus scooped Emma into his arms and backed toward the stairs. We're not going anywhere with you. Rodriguez finally dropped the pretense, her expression turning cold and professional in a completely different way. Mr. Harrison, that child has information that could destroy several ongoing investigations. She's not safe with you, and frankly, neither are you. What investigations? Marcus demanded. The kind that involve federal witness protection, organized crime, and $2 billion in missing assets. Rodriguez pulled out her phone instead of her radio. I'm calling for backup. When my associates arrive, we'll be taking Emma into protective custody, whether you cooperate or not. Emma buried her face against Marcus's shoulder. Marcus, she's not calling police backup. Look at her phone. She's texting someone named Victor. The numbers around that name are the darkest red I've ever seen. Marcus's blood turned to ice. Victor Kozlov was a name that had surfaced during the FBI investigation, a mysterious figure connected to several corporate takeovers and unexplained executive disappearances across the Pacific Northwest. Run! Emma whispered in his ear. The back door by the kitchen. There's a boat dock behind your house. Emma, I can hear you whispering, Rodriguez said, drawing her weapon. Mr. Harrison, put the child down and step away from her. Now. Instead, Marcus tightened his grip on Emma and bolted for the back of the house. Behind them, he heard Rodriguez speaking rapidly into her phone. They're running. Yes, the girl knows. Send the team now. As they reached the kitchen, Emma lifted her head from Marcus's shoulder. Mr. Marcus, your friend Richard is alive. The numbers just told me where he's hiding, but we have to hurry. The bad guys are coming from the water, too. Through the kitchen window, Marcus could see black speedboats approaching his private dock, their engines cutting deadly wakes through the grey waters of Puget Sound. They were trapped. Marcus's mind raced as he carried Emma through the mansion's corridors, the sound of speedboat engines growing louder by the second. Detective Rodriguez's footsteps echoed behind them, but she wasn't running. She was walking with the confidence of someone who knew all the exits were covered. The garage, Emma whispered urgently. Your cars have GPS, but there's something in the garage that doesn't. Marcus burst through the door into his 6-car garage, his eyes scanning desperately for an escape route. His collection of luxury vehicles seemed useless now, everyone equipped with tracking systems that would lead their pursuers directly to them. There, Emma pointed to the corner where Marcus's late father's 1967 Mustang sat under a dust cover. Old cars don't have computers. The numbers around it are clean. Marcus set Emma down and yanked off the cover, revealing the pristine cherry-red muscle car that had been his father's pride and joy. He hadn't driven it in years, but the keys still hung on the same hook where his father had left them. The Mustang roared to life on the first try, its V8 engine drowning out the sound of approaching footsteps. Marcus threw the car into reverse, just as Rodriguez appeared in the doorway, weapon drawn. Emma, get down! Marcus floored the accelerator, tires screaming as they shot backward out of the garage. Rodriguez dove aside as they burst onto the circular driveway. Turn left at the gate, Emma called from where she crouched on the passenger floor. There's a service road that the GPS systems don't know about. I saw it on the delivery truck's paper map. Marcus yanked the wheel hard left, the Mustang's rear end sliding on the wet pavement. Behind them, black SUVs were already pouring through his front gate, while speedboats disgorged armed men at his dock. They raced down a narrow gravel path that wound through the forest behind Marcus's property. Tree branches scraped against the car's windows as they bounced over potholes and fallen logs. "Emma, how do you know about this road?" "I memorize every number and line I see," she replied, cautiously lifting her head. "The delivery man's route map showed 3 ways to your house, but only one that doesn't connect to the main highway system. This road leads to an old fishing camp that's been abandoned for 6 years. Marcus marveled at this child's incredible mind, even as his heart hammered with terror. "And you remember all of that from one glance? Numbers and maps are easy. It's people that are hard to understand." Emma climbed onto the passenger seat and buckled herself in. "Except you, Mr. Marcus. Your numbers are getting brighter gold every time you protect me." They emerged from the forest onto a cracked asphalt road that hadn't been maintained in years. Weeds grew through the pavement, and rusted guardrails hung at dangerous angles. "Where exactly are we going, Emma?" "To find your friend Richard. The numbers finally told me where he's been hiding." Emma pulled out one of her mathematical drawings, the paper covered with complex diagrams that seemed to shift and move in Marcus's peripheral vision. All the coded messages connect to GPS coordinates. He's been living in a place where computers can't track him. "Where?" Emma pointed ahead to where the road curved toward the shoreline. "The old Seahawk fishing lodge. It's been closed since the owner died, but it still has electricity and phone lines, perfect for someone who needs to stay hidden but keep working with computers." Marcus felt a surge of hope mixed with desperate fear. If Richard was alive, if he really had been trying to protect the company assets, then everything could still be saved. But first, they had to survive long enough to reach him. In the rearview mirror, black vehicles appeared on the forest road behind them, their headlights cutting through the growing dusk like angry eyes. "They're following us," Marcus said. Emma turned to look, her small face deadly serious. "Drive faster, Mr. Marcus. The red numbers around those cars are getting bigger. They're not planning to capture us anymore." "What do you mean?" "They're planning to make us disappear forever." The abandoned Seahawk fishing lodge materialized out of the mist like a ghost ship, its weathered cedar shingles and broken dock pilings testament to years of neglect. Marcus parked the Mustang behind a collapsed boathouse, hoping the structure would hide them from their pursuers. "Are you sure Richard's here?" Marcus whispered as they approached the main building. Every window was dark, and the only sound was waves lapping against the rocky shore. Emma nodded confidently. "The computer numbers are singing their strongest song here. He's inside, but he's scared. His numbers are all jittery and yellow." They climbed the lodge's sagging front steps, avoiding rotted boards that looked ready to collapse. Marcus tried the door, locked, but the wood frame was so old that a firm shoulder pushed it open with a sharp crack. Inside, the lodge was a museum of maritime nostalgia. Mounted fish on the walls, nautical charts yellowed with age, and furniture covered in dust sheets. But in the back room, they found signs of recent habitation, empty food containers, a sleeping bag, and most tellingly, multiple computer monitors glowing in the darkness. "Richard," Marcus called softly. A figure emerged from behind a bank of servers, and Marcus's heart nearly stopped. His childhood friend looked like he'd aged a decade in 3 weeks. Richard Castellanos was thinner, unshaven, and his eyes held the haunted look of a man who'd seen too much. "Marcus, my God, what are you doing here?" Richard rushed forward, then stopped short when he saw Emma. "Who's the child?" "This is Emma Collins," Marcus said. "Richard, she's the one who figured out your coded messages. She led me to you." Richard knelt down to Emma's level, studying her with amazement. "You're the little girl who cracked my banking algorithms? That's impossible. Those codes required graduate-level mathematics." Emma tilted her head, examining Richard with those penetrating blue eyes. "Your numbers are getting calmer now that Mr. Marcus is here. You've been really worried about him." Richard looked at Marcus in bewilderment. "What is she talking about?" "It's complicated," Marcus said. "Richard, everyone thinks you embezzled $2 billion from the company. The FBI, the media, my wife, they all believe you betrayed me." Richard's face crumpled with anguish. "Marcus, I'm so sorry. I never meant for you to take the blame. I was trying to save the company, but everything went wrong. Emma said you were protecting the money from someone else. Who? Richard gestured toward his computer setup. Viktor Kozlov and his organization. They've been systematically infiltrating and destroying major corporations across the Northwest. Harrison Steele was next on their list. How do you know? Because I was recruited to help them. Richard's voice was heavy with shame. 3 months ago, a woman approached me claiming to be from a federal task force investigating corporate terrorism. She showed me evidence that Harrison Steele was about to be targeted and asked me to help set up a sting operation. Marcus felt sick. Detective Rodriguez, you know her. Richard's eyes widened in alarm. Marcus, she's not really law enforcement. She's Kozlov's lieutenant. When I figured out the truth, I realized the only way to protect our assets was to move them before the raid happened. Emma tugged on Richard's sleeve. Where did you hide the money? Richard smiled despite their desperate situation. Smart question, little one. It's in 12 different accounts across 3 countries, all protected by quantum encryption that even I can't break without the right mathematical key. What kind of key? Emma asked, her eyes bright with interest. A numeric sequence based on childhood memories that only Marcus and I would know. Unfortunately, the stress of the situation scrambled my thinking, and I can't remember the exact combination I used. Emma looked back and forth between the 2 men. What memories? Marcus and Richard exchanged glances. Emma, we had dozens of childhood adventures. The sequence could be based on any of them. Tell me one, Emma said urgently. The computers are singing louder now. That means the bad guys are getting closer. Richard closed his eyes, thinking, the summer we were 12, we built a fort in my backyard. We worked on it for 37 days, used 43 pieces of lumber, and carved our initials on the main support beam on July 15th. Emma's eyes went wide. July 15th, that's 7 to 15. What year? 1993, Marcus replied. Emma grabbed a piece of paper and started scribbling numbers. 37 days, 43 pieces of lumber. July 15th, 1993. That's 37, 43, 7, 15, 1993. She looked up excitedly. But you said you made a blood brother promise that day too. What were your exact words? Richard stared at her in amazement. We said friends forever, 50-50, no matter what. We each pricked our finger and shook hands 50 times, Marcus finished, the memory flooding back. We counted every handshake. Emma was already working the calculation. 37, 43, 7, 15, 1993, 50. That's your password sequence. Richard rushed to his computer and started typing frantically. My God, she's right. Emma, you're a genius. On the screen, bank account information began appearing. Dozens of accounts in Switzerland, Singapore, and the Cayman Islands, all showing astronomical balances. It's all there, Richard breathed. Every penny plus interest. Marcus, your company can be saved. But their celebration was cut short by the sound of vehicles surrounding the lodge. Through the windows, they could see armed figures taking positions around the building. Too late, Emma whispered, her small voice filled with fear. The red numbers are everywhere now. Viktor Kozlov's voice boomed through a megaphone from outside the lodge. Mr. Castellanos, you've caused us considerable inconvenience. Send out the child and Mr. Harrison, and we'll make this quick and painless. Richard grabbed a shotgun from behind the computer setup, while Marcus pulled Emma behind an overturned table. How did they find us so fast? Emma peeked over the table's edge. They put a tracker on your car when you weren't looking. I can see the little red light blinking under the dashboard. Marcus cursed himself for not thinking of that. Richard, is there another way out of here? There's a tunnel that leads to the old storm cellar, but it comes up near the dock, if they have boats waiting. They do, Emma said matter-of-factly. 3 speedboats with 6 men each. But they don't know about the tunnel yet. Their number patterns show they think we're trapped. Richard was frantically typing commands into his computer. I'm transferring all the account information to a secure server. Even if they get the passwords, the money will be locked down tight. How long do you need? Marcus asked. 5 minutes for the transfers, then another 2 to wipe the local drives. A spotlight blazed through the lodge's front windows, and Kozlov's voice returned. "You have 60 seconds to surrender before we come in shooting." Emma suddenly stood up, her small figure silhouetted against the harsh light. "I have an idea, but you have to trust me." "Emma, get down!" Marcus lunged for her, but she stepped away. "The bad guys want me because they think I know all your friends' passwords, right?" Emma's voice was remarkably calm for a 6-year-old facing armed criminals. "But what if I made them think I forgot everything because I got scared?" Richard looked up from his computer. "What do you mean?" "Little kids are supposed to cry and be helpless when they're scared. What if I act like a normal scared kid instead of a smart one?" Emma picked up Mr. Hopscotch and deliberately messed up her hair. "I'll go outside crying and confused, and while they're trying to figure out if I really forgot everything, you finish with the computers." Marcus felt his heart breaking. "Emma, I won't let you sacrifice yourself for—" "I'm not sacrificing myself," Emma interrupted with a small smile. "I'm being smart. Watch my numbers, Mr. Marcus. When they turn bright white, that means I'm ready for you to come save me." Before either man could stop her, Emma walked toward the front door, clutching her stuffed rabbit and working herself into convincing sobs. "Please don't hurt me," she wailed, her voice carrying clearly through the lodge. "I want my mama. I don't know anything about computers." "Duty." Marcus watched through the window as Emma stumbled out onto the front porch, tears streaming down her face, looking every inch the terrified child she was supposed to be. Several armed men approached cautiously, and Marcus could see Rodriguez talking rapidly into a phone. "She's buying us time," Richard whispered, his fingers flying over the keyboard. "Transfer complete. Starting the data wipe now." Outside, they could hear Rodriguez questioning Emma. "Where are the men, sweetie? Are they still inside?" Emma's response was perfect. "The mean man with the beard was yelling at the computer, but I got scared and ran away. I don't like loud noises. They hurt my ears." "What about the passwords, Emma? Did they tell you any number sequences?" "I don't know," Emma wailed convincingly. "I just want to go home. I want my mama." Richard's computer screens went dark one by one as the data wipe completed. "Done. Even if they torture me, I can't give them what no longer exists." Marcus watched Emma through the window, marveling at her performance, while his heart ached with protective fury. This brave little girl was risking everything to save them, and he'd be damned if he'd let her down. "Richard, when I say go, head for that tunnel. I'm going to create a distraction." "Marcus, what are you planning?" Marcus picked up a kerosene lantern from the lodge's emergency supplies. "Something stupid and heroic that will either save us all or get us killed." Outside, Emma suddenly stopped crying and looked directly at the lodge's front window. Even from a distance, Marcus could see her numbers shifting to brilliant white. "Now, Richard, run!" Marcus lit the lantern and hurled it at the lodge's main support beam, where decades of old wood and dust would turn the building into an inferno within minutes. As flames began to spread, he sprinted for the back door. Behind him, the Seahawk fishing lodge began to burn like a Viking funeral pyre, and somewhere in that chaos, a 6-year-old genius was about to prove that the smallest heroes often cast the longest shadows. The explosion that followed Marcus's kerosene lantern turned the night sky orange and sent Kozlov's men scrambling for cover. In the chaos, Marcus burst through the lodge's back door and circled toward where Emma was being held near the front vehicles. The heat from the burning lodge was intense, and smoke billowed across the clearing, providing perfect cover. Marcus could hear Kozlov shouting orders in accented English while his men tried to regroup. "Forget the building. Secure the child and Castellanos." But Richard was already long gone through the tunnel, and Emma was proving to be far more complicated than they'd anticipated. Marcus crept closer, hiding behind an abandoned truck, and watched the most extraordinary performance of his life. Emma had not only maintained her act as a scared, confused child, she'd somehow convinced Rodriguez that she was having some kind of breakdown. She sat on the ground, rocking back and forth while clutching Mr. Hopscotch, mumbling what sounded like nonsense. 7 purple elephants dancing on Tuesday, 9 yellow butterflies singing backwards. 3 green houses with no doors. Emma's voice was small and confused, nothing like the brilliant child who'd been solving complex mathematical problems an hour earlier. Rodriguez knelt beside her, frustration evident in her voice. "Emma, listen to me carefully. I need you to remember the numbers the men told you, the computer passwords." "Bah, passwords." Emma looked up with vacant eyes. "What's a password? Is that like a magic word? Mama used to tell me magic words before bedtime." Marcus watched Kozlov pace angrily near the burning lodge, his expensive suit singed and his face twisted with rage. This was clearly not going according to plan. "Sir," one of Kozlov's men approached cautiously, "the building's completely engulfed. If Castellanos was inside—" "He wasn't," Kozlov snapped. "That fire was a distraction. Find where he went. Search every inch of this property." Meanwhile, Rodriguez was getting increasingly desperate with Emma. "Emma, think hard. Did the men mention any special numbers, birth dates, addresses, anything?" Emma tilted her head like a confused puppy. "I like numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Can we count to 10? Mama taught me to count to 10. "Not those numbers." Rodriguez's professional facade was cracking. "Computer numbers, banking numbers." Emma's lower lip began to tremble. "Are you mad at me? I don't like when people are mad. It makes my tummy hurt." Marcus realized what Emma was doing. She was systematically convincing them that the trauma of the last few hours had caused some kind of regression, making her useless for their purposes. It was brilliant, but it was also dangerous. If Kozlov decided she was worthless. Marcus's fears were confirmed when he heard Kozlov speaking into his phone. "The child appears to be damaged goods. Should we dispose of her and focus on finding Castellanos?" Marcus couldn't hear the response, but Kozlov's expression suggested he'd received permission to do whatever was necessary. "Rodriguez, we're running out of time. The authorities will respond to this fire soon. If the child can't provide access to the accounts..." Rodriguez stood up, her hand moving toward her weapon. "Emma, I need you to try very hard to remember. If you can't help us, we can't help you." Emma looked up at her with those innocent blue eyes. "Help me what?" "Help you stay alive." The threat was clear, and Marcus knew he had to act. He picked up a chunk of concrete from the ruined foundation and hurled it at the furthest vehicle, creating a loud crash that sent several men running toward the sound. In the confusion, Marcus sprinted toward Emma. But as he reached her, she whispered urgently, "Not yet. I figured out something important about the lady cop. Give me 30 more seconds." Rodriguez had drawn her weapon, but was looking toward the distraction Marcus had created. "Sir, we may have movement near the perimeter." Emma suddenly grabbed Rodriguez's free hand with both of her small ones. "Lady, your numbers just changed color. You're not really bad like the scary man. You're scared too." Rodriguez stared down at Emma in shock. "What did you say?" "Your numbers were red because you were angry and scared, but now they're turning blue. Blue numbers means someone's being forced to do bad things but doesn't want to." Emma's voice was no longer confused. It was clear and confident. "He has someone you love, doesn't he?" Rodriguez's weapon wavered, and for the first time since this nightmare began, Marcus saw genuine emotion in her eyes. "How could you possibly—" Rodriguez's voice cracked. "Emma, how do you know that?" "Because blue numbers don't lie," Emma said softly, "and because my mama had blue numbers too when the bad men from the hospital made her sign papers she didn't want to sign." Rodriguez glanced nervously at Kozlov, who was still directing the search for Richard. Then she looked back down at Emma with something that might have been hope. "Emma, if I help you and Mr. Marcus get away, can you really see where my daughter is?" Marcus's breath caught. Rodriguez had a daughter being held hostage. Emma nodded solemnly. "I can see number trails for everyone. Your little girl is somewhere with lots of concrete and metal, somewhere that used to hold boats but doesn't anymore." "The old shipyard," Rodriguez whispered. "Emma, you have to promise me. If I get you out of here, you'll help me find her." "I promise," Emma said, "but we have to go right now. The scary man's numbers just turned black. That means he's done waiting. As if summoned by Emma's words, Kozlov's voice cut through the night. "Rodriguez, enough games. Kill them both, and let's finish this." Rodriguez's face transformed as Kozlov's order registered. Whatever maternal instinct had been triggered by Emma's revelation about her daughter overrode years of criminal conditioning. She spun toward Kozlov, her service weapon raised. "I don't think so, Victor." The standoff lasted exactly 3 seconds before chaos erupted. Kozlov dove behind an SUV while his men scrambled for position, but Rodriguez had the advantage of surprise. Her first shot shattered the windshield of the nearest vehicle, sending glass cascading across the clearing. "Emma, run!" Marcus scooped up the little girl and sprinted toward the tree line as gunfire exploded behind them. Rodriguez provided covering fire, but she was outnumbered 6-1. They crashed through the underbrush, branches tearing at their clothes as Emma clung to his neck. Behind them, the battle was fierce but brief. Rodriguez was an excellent shot, but eventually overwhelmed. "This way," Emma whispered urgently, pointing through the darkness. "I can see Richard's number trail. He's hiding by the water, but not where they think." They stumbled down a rocky slope toward the shoreline, where fog was rolling in from Puget Sound. The mist provided cover, but it also made navigation treacherous in the darkness. "Emma, how can you possibly track Richard in this?" "Everyone leaves number trails when they move through places," she explained matter-of-factly. "Richard's numbers are bright yellow because he's scared, but determined. They lead that way." She pointed toward a collapsed pier that extended into the water. They found Richard crouched beneath the broken dock structure, laptop balanced on a piece of driftwood as he worked frantically in the dim glow of the screen. "Marcus, thank God you're alive! Where's Detective Rodriguez?" She turned against Kozlov to protect her daughter, but they outnumbered her. Marcus set Emma down carefully. "Richard, please tell me you've got a plan beyond hiding under this pier." Richard's fingers flew across the keyboard. "Better than that. I've been transferring the Harrison Steel assets back to legitimate accounts, but with a twist. Every transaction is being copied to FBI Financial Crimes Division and the Seattle Times business desk." "What does that mean?" "It means in about 10 minutes, the real story of Kozlov's corporate conspiracy goes public simultaneously with the return of your company's money. Even if they kill us, the truth will be exposed." Emma tugged on Richard's sleeve. "Can you add Detective Rodriguez's little girl to the story? She's being held at the old shipyard, and her mama tried to save us." Richard paused in his typing. "Emma, how do you know about Rodriguez's daughter?" "Her blue numbers told me, and the number trail shows exactly where the little girl is hidden." Emma closed her eyes, concentrating. "Pier 47, Building C, 3rd floor, room with no windows." She's scared, but not hurt. Marcus stared at this extraordinary child. "Emma, you can't possibly know all of that." "Numbers don't lie," Emma said simply, "and everyone leaves number footprints wherever they go. I can follow them like a trail through the forest." Richard added Rodriguez's information to his data package. "If this works, the FBI will find her daughter within hours of the story breaking." The sound of speedboat engines grew louder as Kozlov's men expanded their search to the waterfront. Powerful spotlights swept across the fog, probing for movement. "They're getting closer," Marcus whispered. Emma suddenly stood up, her small figure barely visible in the mist. "I need to do one more thing before the bad men find us." "Emma, what are you—" She walked to the edge of the broken pier and called out in her clear child's voice, "Mr. Kozlov, I want to make a deal with you." The speedboat engines immediately cut to idle, and Kozlov's accented voice carried across the water. "What kind of deal, little girl?" "I'll tell you all the passwords and account numbers if you promise to let Detective Rodriguez's little girl go home to her mama." Marcus lunged forward to grab Emma, but she stepped beyond his reach. "Emma, no!" "It's okay, Mr. Marcus," she whispered. "Trust me one more time. I know exactly what I'm doing." Kozlov's voice was closer now. His boat was approaching the pier. "You have the account access codes?" "All of them," Emma called back. "But I'll only tell you if you bring Rodriguez here and let her call her little girl to make sure she's safe." There was a long pause. Then Kozlov's voice, calculating and cold. Very well, but if you're lying, child, you'll watch Mr. Harrison die very slowly. As the speedboat's spotlight illuminated their hiding place, Emma turned to Marcus with a smile that seemed impossibly wise for a 6-year-old. "Don't worry," she whispered. "The numbers just told me something wonderful. Help is coming from a direction nobody expects." Before Marcus could ask what she meant, the night exploded with the sound of helicopters and federal agents rappelling from the sky. FBI agent Sarah Chen's voice boomed through a helicopter-mounted speaker. "This is the Federal Bureau of Investigation. You are surrounded. Lay down your weapons immediately." The cavalry had arrived in spectacular fashion, 3 helicopters descending through the fog, while federal agents fast-roped onto the pier and shoreline. Kozlov's speedboats found themselves trapped between the rocky shore and Coast Guard cutters, emerging from the mist like vengeful ghosts. Marcus pulled Emma close as chaos erupted around them. "How did you know they were coming?" Emma grinned up at him, her blue eyes sparkling with mischief. "Mr. Richards' computer program didn't just send information to the FBI, it sent our exact location too. Plus, I've been counting the number patterns of helicopter engines for the last 5 minutes. They were flying in a search grid, getting closer and closer." Agent Chen approached their position, weapon drawn but pointed safely downward. "Mr. Harrison, I'm Agent Chen. Are you and the child injured?" "We're fine, but Detective Rodriguez was shot protecting us, and there's something Emma needs to tell you about Rodriguez's daughter." Emma stepped forward with startling confidence. "Agent Chen, Detective Rodriguez's little girl is being held at Pier 47, Building C, 3rd floor, in a room with no windows. Her name is Sophia, and she's 8 years old with dark hair and a pink backpack." Agent Chen spoke rapidly into her radio, coordinating with other teams. Within minutes, they received confirmation. Sophia Rodriguez had been found exactly where Emma described, frightened but unharmed. The arrests happened swiftly after that. Kozlov was pulled from his speedboat in handcuffs, his expensive suit soaked with seawater, and his arrogant expression replaced by the grim realization that his empire was crumbling. His men surrendered without further resistance once they realized they were vastly outnumbered. Detective Rodriguez, wounded but alive, was airlifted to Seattle General Hospital. Before the medical helicopter departed, she managed to grab Emma's hand. "Thank you," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "You saved my little girl." Emma squeezed back with her tiny fingers. Blue numbers always find their way home, to the people they love. 3 hours later, Marcus sat in an FBI debriefing room watching Emma draw pictures, while federal agents processed the most complex financial conspiracy in Seattle's history. Richard's data dump had exposed not just Kozlov's organization, but a network of corrupted officials, laundered money, and corporate takeovers spanning the entire Pacific Northwest. "Mr. Harrison," Agent Chen approached with a stack of documents. "I have some good news. All of Harrison Steele's assets have been recovered and returned to legitimate accounts. Your company is solvent again, and all criminal charges against you have been dropped." Marcus felt tears of relief threatening, but his attention was focused on Emma. "Agent Chen, what happens to her now?" "That's complicated. She has no living relatives, and given her extraordinary abilities, there are several government agencies that would very much like to—" "No," Marcus's voice was firm. "She's not going to be some government asset. She's a little girl who needs a family." Emma looked up from her drawing, having heard every word. "Mr. Marcus, do you want to be my family?" The question hung in the air, like a prayer waiting to be answered. Marcus knelt down beside her chair, his heart full of emotions he couldn't name. "Emma, sweetheart, I would be honored to be your family. But are you sure? I lost my own daughters because I worked too much, because I didn't know how to put family first." Emma set down her crayons and placed her small hands on either side of his face, studying him with those impossibly wise eyes. "Your numbers are pure gold now, Mr. Marcus. Gold numbers mean someone's heart is in the right place. Besides," she grinned, "you promised me a bed, remember? And I really like my new room with the view of the water." 6 months later, Marcus Harrison stood in the living room of a smaller, warmer house overlooking Elliott Bay, watching Emma show her mathematical drawings to her new tutor, a kind woman who understood that genius children needed special care and infinite patience. Harrison's steel industries was thriving again, but Marcus had restructured his life completely. He worked reasonable hours, took weekends off, and never missed Emma's bedtime stories. His ex-wife Jennifer had even brought the twins for dinner twice, cautiously rebuilding their relationship as she saw how fatherhood had transformed him. "Daddy Marcus," Emma called from her desk by the window, "I'm working on a new number pattern. Want to see?" Marcus walked over to find her drawing something that looked like a family tree but made entirely of numbers and mathematical symbols. At the top were two large golden numbers labeled MM and EC, with smaller numbers branching out below. "What's this one for, sweetheart?" Emma looked up at him with that radiant smile that never failed to melt his heart. "It's a happiness equation. I'm calculating how much our family grows bigger every day." Marcus kissed the top of her blonde head, marveling at the miracle that had led this extraordinary child into his life during his darkest hour. "And what's the answer to the equation?" Emma pointed to a large infinity symbol at the bottom of the page. "This much, Daddy Marcus, this much forever and ever." Outside, the Seattle skyline glittered in the afternoon sun, and somewhere in the numbers dancing through the air around them, Marcus could almost hear the music Emma described, the beautiful, complex symphony of a life transformed by love, second chances, and the unshakable faith of a little girl who saw good in everyone's numbers, especially his.